10 Brutal Stoic Rules to help you rise when life is falling apart. Stoicism, Part 1. When life is falling apart. Some mornings begin in a strange way. Not the kind where you jolt awake from a nightmare, and not because bad news has just arrived. You simply open your eyes. Light slips through the curtains. Your body is still there, breathing steadily, but inside, everything feels empty. Not overwhelming sadness, not sharp pain, just a dull, lingering exhaustion. As if you have walked too far for too long without ever finding a place to rest. You lie there for a few more minutes, not because you are lazy, but because you are no longer sure you have the strength to begin another day that looks exactly like all the ones before it. You know you have to get up. You know that. But just thinking about continuing is enough to make your entire body feel heavy. I have been in mornings like that. Not once, but many times. Mornings where brushing your teeth, getting dressed, stepping outside suddenly feel like incomprehensible tasks, as if you are playing a role that no longer belongs to you. On the outside, everything continues as usual. People go to work, they laugh, they post photos online that look perfectly fine. And you are there, gathering whatever energy you have left just to avoid collapsing at the very start of the day. No one sees it. And because no one sees it, you slowly learn how to pretend that you are fine too. You have tried hard. Maybe you have read books, many books, books about discipline, success, changing your mindset. You have watched videos, listened to podcasts, saved quotes that sounded powerful, convincing, true. For a while, you genuinely believed that this time would be different, that this time you would finally do it. And then, a few days later, a few weeks later, you find yourself right back in the same place, the same stuck feeling, the same unfinished promise to yourself. The most painful part is not failure itself. The most painful part is knowing exactly what you need to do and still being unable to do it. Then the comparisons begin, not because you want them to, but because they happen almost automatically. You look at other people and they seem to be moving forward, as if they have some control over their lives. You wonder why they can do it, and you cannot. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet sense of shame begins to form. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough to slowly wear you down. Shame for knowing so much and still feeling weak. Shame for having made promises to yourself too many times. Shame for the feeling that you are living below your true potential. I want you to pause here for a moment. Not to blame yourself, just to be honest. Honest with a question you may have avoided for a long time. If I know I need to be stronger, if I understand that discipline matters, that emotions cannot keep leading my life forever, then why am I still not getting up? Why am I still stuck here in the same loop, the same exhaustion, the same nameless confusion? This is not a comfortable question, but it is a real one. And if you are still listening, there's a good chance you have asked yourself something similar late at night or on a morning just like the one I described. Right now, I do not want you to answer that question. I do not want to give advice either. I only want you to stay here for a moment, in this exact point in time. Pause. Breathe in gently. Not deeply, just enough to feel the air enter your chest. Then breathe out a little more slowly. You do not need to fix your entire life right now. You do not need to become strong immediately. The only thing you need to do is stop turning your back on yourself again. Just stay. Just listen. and allow everything to settle, even if only for a few seconds. What comes next is not meant to teach you how to live, but to help you rediscover an inner anchor, right as everything outside feels like it is collapsing. Part 2. Shared Understanding. In the previous part, we stayed with that exhaustion instead of running from it, without decoration or denial. And when you find the courage to look directly at the cracks forming in your life, something subtle begins to happen. You start seeing things more slowly, more clearly. Not because the problems disappear, but because you stop rushing to condemn yourself. From that space, I want to share a familiar story, so familiar that you may have seen it play out in your own life more than once. Imagine two people, very similar to each other. They live in the same city, do nearly the same work, and carry dreams that are not all that different. One day, the same event happens to both of them. Maybe they lose their job. Maybe a relationship falls apart. Maybe a plan they had placed all their hopes on suddenly collapses. The event itself is nothing extraordinary. Life is like that. It does not ask for permission. What matters is what comes after. The first person breaks, not all at once, but gradually. They begin to blame circumstances, then others, and finally themselves. Each day they carry the event with them like proof that life is unfair, that they tried but fate was not on their side. The second person also hurts. They feel lost. They have sleepless nights. But somewhere, quietly, they choose a different response. Not a heroic one, not a dramatic one, just a small decision. This event will not define their entire identity. The same event, two very different outcomes. And the difference was not luck. For a long time, I believed life was unfair, that some people simply had it easier, that some falls should never have happened. That belief comforted me, but it also became a subtle excuse not to stand up when I needed to. Then one day, when my own life was in disarray, I realized something that left me silent for a long time. What broke me was not what happened. What exhausted me was how I reacted to it every single day. I carried it everywhere, replayed it endlessly in my mind, let it decide my mood, my actions, and even how I saw the future. I was not defeated by the event. I surrendered to my reaction to it. That realization was not comforting. It did not bring immediate relief, but it brought something far more important. Power. A very quiet kind of power. Because if my reaction was what kept me stuck, then my reaction was also the one thing still within my control. This is where Stoic philosophy enters, not as a lecture, but as a timely whisper. Epictetus said simply that it is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that you have power over your mind, not over external events. These words do not demand that you become strong immediately. They simply draw a clear line between what you can control and what you cannot. When you are at the bottom, that line becomes vital. You cannot control the past. You cannot control who left or which opportunities slipped away, but you can still control something, however small. You can control your reaction in this moment. You can choose whether to keep beating yourself with old thoughts. You can choose to stand up one more time, even if it is done quietly. Before we go further, pause again. Not to think, but to feel. Let your shoulders relax a little. Breathe in slowly and breathe out longer. You do not need to agree with everything you just heard. You do not need to change right away. Just recognize this. Even when life is falling apart, you have not lost everything. you still have the ability to choose your response. And from that small point, the path back up begins to take shape. In the next part, we will leave theory behind and move into rules that are direct, honest, sometimes uncomfortable, but solid enough to help you reclaim yourself step by step, right in the middle of the ruins. Part 3. 10 Brutal Stoic Rules. Once you realize that the only thing you still hold in the middle of this collapse is your own reaction, the question is no longer, why did my life end up like this? But, what will I do with what remains of me? From here on, we stop talking about emotions. Not because they do not matter, but because if emotions take the wheel now, you will keep going in circles. The rules ahead are not meant to make you feel comfortable. They are meant to keep you standing when everything else is unstable. I am not speaking to you from above, but as someone who has stumbled, compromised, been weak, and learned these lessons the hardest way. The first rule is, stop negotiating with your weakness. This is where most people lose without realizing it. Not because they do not try, but because they negotiate with their weakness every day. You set an alarm and hit snooze for 5 more minutes. You tell yourself you will rest just today and start seriously tomorrow. You send another message to someone you know is no longer good for you, simply because of the emptiness. These compromises seem small and harmless, but I learned that every time I negotiated with my weakness, I was teaching myself that discipline is negotiable. Marcus Aurelius wrote about building your life through small actions and being satisfied when each action fulfills its duty. This is not about great success, but about not betraying your future for cheap compromises. The small action here is a firm decision. When you clearly recognize weakness, do not negotiate. Just stop. The feeling that follows is not excitement, but a strange calm, because you know you just chose your own side. The second rule is control your reactions. I once let a careless remark ruin my entire day. Not because the remark was powerful, but because I allowed it to live in my head for too long. You may be criticized, misunderstood, or treated unfairly, and you carry that feeling from morning to night, from one day to the next. Epictetus was clear. It is not events that cause suffering, but how we interpret them. When I understood this, I began practicing something simple yet difficult: pausing between reaction and action. Not arguing immediately, not explaining immediately, not letting emotion inflate the story. Just separating the event from the narrative in my mind. This does not make you weaker, it makes you freer. And that freedom creates a quiet strength because no one can easily pull you away from your center anymore. The third rule is, do the hard thing even when you don't feel like it. There is a truth that took me a long time to accept. Motivation never comes before action. I waited for inspiration, for the day I would finally feel ready, and while I waited, life kept moving on. Seneca said that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, and this is especially true with difficult tasks. The hard thing in your mind is always scarier than the hard thing in real life. The small action here is not changing your entire life, but doing one hard thing for 10 minutes, even when you do not want to. When it is done, the feeling is not joy, but relief. Relief because you proved to yourself that emotions are no longer your master. The fourth rule is, cut the noise, protect your focus. When life collapses, your mind becomes even more vulnerable to noise. Social media, news, comparisons, all of it keeps you busy while leaving you empty. I once scrolled for hours, not because I enjoyed it, but because I did not want to be alone with my thoughts. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to focus seriously and honestly on the task in front of him. The small action here is cutting one source of distraction. Just one. The feeling that follows is quiet, not immediately pleasant, but real, as if you have reclaimed a piece of stolen energy. The fifth rule is, stop seeking approval. When everything falls apart, the desire for validation grows stronger. You fear judgment, misunderstanding, abandonment. I lived in that fear for a long time, and it kept me from changing. Marcus Aurelius observed that we love ourselves more than others, yet value their opinions more than our own. The small action is doing one thing that is right for you, even if no one applauds. The feeling afterward is relief, because you no longer have to perform. The sixth rule is, silence is power. I used to believe that talking more protected me, that explaining would make others understand. But the more I spoke, the more exhausted I became. Epictetus advised making silence the general rule and speaking only when necessary. The small action is slowing down your speech. That silence gives you a strange strength because you stop wasting energy on unnecessary battles. The eighth rule is, discomfort is your teacher. I used to avoid anything uncomfortable, but Stoics do not seek comfort. They seek strength. Marcus Aurelius said that if something is endurable, then endure it. The small action is facing one thing you have been avoiding. The feeling afterward is not happiness, but self-respect. The ninth rule is, discipline is greater than motivation. This may be the hardest truth to accept when you are at the bottom. When everything collapses, what you crave most is motivation, a surge of energy, a mental spark, a day when you wake up wanting to change everything. I waited for that day for a long time, and while waiting, I built nothing. Motivation is like weather. It comes and goes, indifferent to when you need it. Epictetus said that no one is free who cannot govern themselves, and self-governance does not mean always feeling energized. It means acting even when no feeling supports you. Discipline does not require belief in yourself, it only requires your presence. The small action here is not creating a perfect plan, but choosing a habit so simple you cannot excuse your way out of it. The same wake-up time, the same small task every day, regardless of mood. Over time, something important happens. You stop asking, "Do I feel like doing this today?" That question disappears, and when it disappears, the chaos in your mind softens. The final feeling is not excitement, but stability. A precious stability when the outside world remains uncertain. You begin to trust a simple truth. Even without motivation, you can still move forward. And that trust becomes real strength. The 10th rule is, live in alignment with your actions. Knowledge will not save you. Only action will. Marcus Aurelius said not to debate what a good person is, but to be one. The small action is doing one thing that matches the values you speak about. The feeling afterward is wholeness, because you are no longer living two separate lives. None of these rules are meant to turn you into someone else overnight. They exist to help you stand a little more firmly in the middle of the ruins. And when you stand long enough, you realize you were never completely broken. In the final part, we will not add more rules. We will talk about staying with the calm you have begun to find and how to move forward without rushing to become strong immediately. Part 4. Stillness, peace, and rising. If you are listening at this point, you are likely no longer in the same state as when we began. Not because every problem has been solved, but because the way you see them has changed. We started with a heavy morning where the body wakes but the mind feels empty. A life that seems to be falling apart piece by piece, slowly, but relentlessly. And yet, if you are still here, still listening, there is an important truth that must be spoken. Your life may have fallen apart, yes, but you are still here. You did not disappear. You did not completely give up. That alone is a form of strength you may never have acknowledged. Stoicism does not define rising the way the world does. Rising does not mean becoming strong instantly, overflowing with motivation, or gaining control overnight. Rising, in its deeper sense, simply means not falling further. It means refusing to keep betraying yourself with choices that drag you deeper. Some days, rising is just getting out of bed. Some days, it is not texting the person who once hurt you. Some days, it is finishing one small task no one sees. These moments are not grand, but they are real. And it is these small moments that build a stable life, not bursts of fiery resolve that burn out quickly. If there is one thing Stoicism insists on, it is compassion for yourself paired with responsibility. Compassion is not indulgence. It is choosing to stop speaking to yourself with the harshest voice you know. You do not need to punish yourself for having been weak. You do not need to force yourself to be okay faster. What you have lived through, the mistakes you made, the times you fell, all of it is part of being human. Seneca said that no one becomes wise without pain. That does not mean pain is the goal, but it is not proof of failure. When you allow yourself to slow down, when you stop forcing yourself to chase an image, a quiet peace begins to appear. Not loud, not dramatic, just the sense that you are no longer at war with yourself. Pause one more time, not to think, but to stay. Breathe in gently. As you breathe out, let your shoulders drop. You do not need to decide your entire future right now. You do not need to make grand promises. The only thing you need to do is allow this moment to pass without judgment. In that stillness, you will realize that peace is not the absence of instability outside, but the absence of panic inside. When this video ends, your life may still be unsorted. Tomorrow may still be difficult, but you will step into it with something you did not have before. Clarity, self-control, and a simple, honest reminder. You do not need to become someone else to deserve your life. You only need to keep walking, slowly, steadily, without falling further. And if you forget, remember this: stillness is always there, waiting for you to return.